There we go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 2025 edition of the North Precinct Advisory Council. I'm Katie Dwyer, the current NPAC president. Glad you're all here. A couple things to just get us started. First of all, I always like to acknowledge the board members. You see my face a lot, but it's actually a board. So if they can wave when I call their name. Susan Strank, who's our vice president, Andrea Purr, Melinda Jacobson. I don't think Melinda's on yet. Diane Vincent. I think she's not got a camera right now. Nancy Rawhauser, Cheryl Bishop. And we also want to always thank the Seattle Police Foundation, which was kind enough to fund our Zoom license for this year. So we very much appreciate this. We're an all-volunteer organization. We have no budget. Oddly enough, we have a position for a treasurer, but we don't have a budget. So we haven't filled that. And that's a great reminder to everybody that today is the last day. If you're interested in potentially being on the board or participating with North Precinct Advisory Council to help us organize these meetings and choose speakers, today is the deadline. If you want to run for an officer, for president, vice president, or secretary, we'd love to have you. Send in a note. Anyone who does send that in, we'll acknowledge that within the next day, and we'll turn around and get some information back out to you. The elections are in June, and you have to attend the June meeting, which is an in-person meeting. We look forward to the June and September meetings each year. They are in person, and our friends at Epic Life Lutheran Church are once again volunteering their space for us. It's a lovely large room, and we really appreciate their generosity. There's good parking. It's up on 105th and Stone. So mark your calendars for the June 4th, Wednesday, June 4th meeting. We'll open the doors at 6:30 so that people can visit a bit. And we are very happy to say that we have the new chief of police who will be speaking to us in person. So Chief Barnes will be available there. So you get to meet the new Seattle Police Chief, get to know some of your neighbors, and we hope you can join us. Also want to always call out, we're fortunate that three of the city council districts often show up, have their reps, and I just like to call them out because they're really good about putting information in the chat. So I want to call out for District 4, Maritza Rivera. Usually Wendy logs in. Wendy, if you're here, put something in the chat. For District 5, Kathy Moore, Henry Pollitt. I think I saw him log in a bit ago. And for District 6, Dan Strauss, it's often Joel Raphael who shows up. Again, if you guys are here, please put something in the chat so that folks know you're there. They're great about adding information and answering questions. So look for those local reps in the chat. And as a reminder, as we get started with our speaker for tonight, we do encourage you to put your questions in the chat. It's the best way we can get to the most questions, and we be the most equitable in making sure we have a variety of voices that are heard. So if you would put your questions in the chat, when the speaker's done with the presentation, I will go through and make sure we call it as many of those as possible. Sometimes we don't have time to let folks go live and unmute. So if you want to be sure that gets in, go with the chat. And I think with that, we're ready to start our presentation. We are happy to have a return visit from the CARE team. You learned a little bit about that a little over a year ago. And now that that is expanding, we have got Jacob Adams, who is the chief of staff for the CARE team. And he is going to present, again, CARE, I should have said. CARE is Community Assisted Response and Engagement. And Jacob, I think you are on and the spotlight is yours. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. And hello to everyone. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to attend these meetings. And I will say we apologize. Chief Barden couldn't make it. She had other personal matters she had to tend to. But before we begin with our presentation, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jacob Adams. I'm the chief of staff with CARE. I've actually worked for the city for 17 years. I started in the 911 center and have a background more in the 911 management supervisor side. But I've continued just my interest in the city and public safety with everything we've done into the kind of other side, chief of staff, overseeing the community crisis response team, in addition to continuing to assist with the 911 center and collaborating with all of our partners, which includes SPD forever. Those are always our partners, CSOs, fire, and all the other agencies in the city. And so I'm a Washington native, and I love our area, and it's just really a pleasure to be able to participate in these types of meetings. I really appreciate everything that you all do to be involved and all of the collaborations that take forth from it. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be able to be here today. I also do have our partner, Erica Lee, who is a CCR supervisor. Our manager, Catriana Hernandez, intended to be here, but we had some unexpected personnel issues, and we had to have Kat tend to those. So Erica was gracious enough to join me as a CCR representative. So we're excited about that. We do have a presentation that I'm going to share my screen and kind of go over an overview of CARE, and we'll start from there. And just want to make sure everybody could see the screen. Full screen? All right. Perfect.
Yes, looks good.
All right. So CARE, that stands for Community Assisted Response and Engagement Department. And so we represent Seattle's third public safety department. The Seattle CARE Department's mission is to improve public safety by unifying and aligning the city's community-focused public safety investments and services to resolve low-risk calls for behavioral health matters through diversified responses that are evidence-based, effective, innovative, and compassionate. This program with the Community Crisis Response Team launched on October 25th, 2023. CARE has a couple of divisions underneath it, primarily the Seattle 911 Center and then the CARE Team Community Crisis Responders. To start with the CARE team, our capacity is 4 teams of 2 CCRs, also known as Community Crisis Responders per zone. Our hours of operation are 12 p.m. to 10 p.m., or in military time, 1,200 to 2,200 hours. We work 7 days a week, and we are fully expanded citywide. So just as a kind of an oversight, we started in the North Precinct in mid to late January this year. And so we've had teams in North all of 2025 since January. We originally started in the UW PD area, and recently we were able to secure an area in the North Precinct Annex building, which gives us Northeast coverage as well. So it's pretty exciting. We have teams in North kind of spread out to be more available and better serve those communities faster for response when SPD calls on us. The types of calls that we can respond to are dual dispatch, nonviolent person down, and welfare check type calls. Additionally, we can respond at an officer's request. What we offer primarily is behavioral crisis de-escalation, emotional support, resource navigation, connection to services, and basic needs. So how is the CARE team dispatched? The CARE team currently can only be dispatched by Seattle 911, and it kind of happens in one of 2 ways. We have a dual dispatch program that relates to down persons and welfare check calls. This is where essentially certain criteria are met, and when SPD is dispatched, a CARE team can be dispatched with them. Of course, Seattle Police will go and secure the scene to make sure it's safe, but when those conditions are met, the CARE team can come in and assist with all of their expertise as necessary. There are other situations where SPD can respond and determine that they would like us for secondary response. From there, it's a situation that, just has certain criteria has to be met. Typically it's crisis. And then we can come and provide assistance to the primary responders. What we mostly provide is interpersonal support. This is de-escalation, redirection, emotional support, and safety planning for suicidal ideation. We also have the ability to offer referrals and resources. So this is information on local resources, referrals, or getting people connected with certain resources when appropriate. Also transportation. We do have basic need supplies with our crews. So we have snacks, water, hygiene items, childcare supplies, and certain heat or cold related items. The crew wants to be sufficiently equipped with things just in case. So like say if it was cold outside during the winter months, we have blankets. In the summertime, of course, water. So kind of an overview for the community crisis responders. The intent of this is to be a resource that can alleviate the pressure that the police face every day. It frees them up to respond to more higher priority calls, and it significantly can increase public safety. We can reduce the potentiality for use of force, time spent documenting such use, and potential liability cases with such use. We can also increase the timeliness of responses to 911 calls overall, because secondary resources have the ability to free up our emergency responders to go to more urgent matters that they need to get to. This also can streamline the process of identifying underlying behavioral health issues and co-facilitating appropriate interventions, which is a pretty, massive topic in the city of Seattle. We also can improve both short and long-term outcomes. That's the CCR side of care. The other side is also the Seattle 911 Center. So the 911 Center is known as a PSAP. That's a public safety answering point. They take all of your 911 calls in the area based on your cell phone geography or landlines. The way that it works, care kind of sits in the middle of this diagram. And when it comes to the care team, the CCRs, the low acuity behavioral crisis calls, we could fall in line with those. But with the 911 Center, where it goes to Seattle Police, is your higher acuity safety concerns, your crimes, that's Seattle Police. Then you go over to the fire department, where we actually transfer 911 calls to the fire department, where you have your higher acuity medical concerns. And then that's where fire screens for fire and medical type situations. As far as your 911 center in Seattle, it's the largest 911 center in Washington. It's also the busiest 911 center in the Pacific Northwest. And to give you an idea, King County has 11 total 911 centers. We're one of 11. Seattle's public safety data hub is the 911 center, and we also control emergency responses. Many people consider that the first responders is 911 call takers and dispatchers. It's a national movement right now that's happening where the National Job Classification originally created 911 as secretarial. And a lot of people may not understand this, but 911 dispatching is not clerical work. It's very, very intense work, and it requires a lot of training and highly skilled individuals to take the calls and dispatch the calls. On average, our 911 center receives about 800,000 plus calls a year. In fact, last year, I think we were closer to 900,000 in total volume. So when it comes in how to reach us, obviously 911 is for emergencies. There is a City of Seattle non-emergency line, 206-625-5011. That would be where you would call for non-urgent situations where there's no threats to your safety, and it's maybe after the fact situations, low-level situations. The best advice I could give in those situations is if you're unsure about your safety, you're not sure which number to call, always call 911, and the call takers can triage your situation in seconds. So calling 911. So how it works. So you, the caller on the left side, you call 911, you reach the Seattle 911 Center. At that point, it can kind of lead to a couple of things. It could be the fire department. It could be a transfer to state patrol. It could even be a transfer to another agency in the Puget Sound, or it could lead to dispatch internally. So when we handle the call, it could be an emergency that leads to dispatch, and that leads to the police officers if you follow the diagram to the bottom. In some situations, it could be a non-emergency that you called 911 on. In those cases, you get transferred to another line, and potentially they could lead to referrals or online reporting. There's also the ability SPD has to have phone reports through the telephone reporting unit. So general tips when you're calling 911, they can be very difficult situations. When you're calling 911, you're experiencing an emergency, and emotions can be heightened, and we understand that. But the best advice we can give you is just let the call taker guide the call. We ask questions in a certain order, and we ask pertinent safety questions to ensure the safety of everybody. Just answer the questions. Don't overthink it. If you don't know the answer, I don't know is fine. But when getting these questions asked to you, understand that the questions in the interview do not delay response from an officer. If you're in an emergency situation, call takers can process a call in our computer-aided dispatch program and officers can start going to the call while you're still talking to them. So please consider that while answering questions. It does not delay the process. And the most important thing of any time you call 911 is just give the facts, give what you know. Don't go on assumptions. Don't give guesses. Like I said, if you don't know, that's fine. I don't know or no is a totally appropriate answer. When you call 911, there's a couple of things you can expect to always be asked. Where you're at, the address, what is your location? Knowing your address or the cross streets or even the name of a business is very crucial to the response. Ultimately, if we can't find out where you're at, it's very difficult to provide the correct assistance. From there, it kind of follows the W's, right? What happened? Tell us what happened. Briefly describe the incident. What kind of a crime was committed? And then, of course, we always ask time delay. How many minutes ago did this happen? Is this still happening right now? Did this happen yesterday? This is a very common question that we always ask. From there, we always ask weapons. Are there any weapons involved? Guns, knives, bats, anything that could be a weapon, we're always going to ask that for everyone's safety. And we also ask why. What led up to this? Why did this occur? Do you have any idea? Again, if you don't know, that's fine, but it is a question to understand the context of the situation. And then, of course, we always ask, who are the involved people? So we're always going to get descriptions of suspects, victims, vehicles, involved people. So when we do ask about people and vehicles, there's some general industry standards that we always adhere to. So when we ask about people descriptors, we start from top to bottom and go on the outside to inside when it comes to clothing. When it comes to vehicles, we have an acronym that we call symbols. And it's the color, year, make, model, the body style of the vehicle, any kind of accessories, and then the license plate. You can always guarantee that a call taker is going to be asking you, what color is the car? What do you know what kind of a model it is? Body? What's the license plate? Those are universal questions. As far as the call taker, they're always going to prioritize calls. Any call they received has to be immediately triaged and prioritized according to the situation. A priority 1 represents an immediate threat to life. It's a high priority call, and that means that police or fire are going code. That means they're coming real fast to your situation. Priority 2s are just under that. They're considered urgent. They're not necessarily life-threatening at this point, but it could escalate if assistance doesn't arrive soon. Priority 3s, these are things that are considered not critical to life and safety, but they still represent a need for the police to respond. They could be reports, investigations, or just restoration of the peace, but they're not considered threats to life and safety. Priority 4 calls are something that are more like parking complaints, certain level types of calls where they don't require a police report, but they require some kind of a response or action. So just for information, what the call taker sees is we use a product that's known as a CAD, a computer-aided dispatch program. This is a CAD screen and a CAD mask. And so the call taker, when they're talking to you, they're typing it up as you're talking. At the top, they have the address, and they always have to type in the address. We have to have an address or else we don't know where to send the help. They have general type codes where you see that blue box with the priority right next to it. Type codes are kind of a paraphrased summary of what the situation is. They don't really have an impact on the response. The priority is the biggest impact on the response. That's where you see the 1, 2, or the 3. From there, you can see other parts of this CAD mask where they ask names, they ask phone numbers, and then they'll also ask about the other people. In our program we use, you would find that in the entities button down at the bottom. Once they're done gathering all the required information, they hit the save and close button and it goes to the dispatcher. While we're talking about call takers, they might offer you online reporting. And just for information, Seattle Police offers a wide variety of things online. This is meant to alleviate the pressure of patrol's workload. And it actually serves as a pretty convenient option for people that want to be able to express all of their thoughts and documentation in a report, where it also gives them the time to complete the report at their leisure, at their own pace. So this ranges from credit card fraud, graffiti, harassing phone calls, identity theft, simple shoplifts, lost property, etc. Moving on to the dispatcher, once a call is created, it goes to the dispatcher. In Seattle, we have 4 primary zones: north, south, east, and west. Your area would be the north dispatcher, who covers all of the north end of Seattle, north of the Ship Canal. They receive all the typed up 911 calls from the call takers. They assign police resources or care resources, CSO resources, any resources on their zone to calls, parking enforcement as needed. They manage the radio traffic and they keep track of the resources. They also are documenteers. So they're constantly recording all of the updates on a call. So they're very, very busy and they're multitasking. On any given night, they could have 60 to 70 responders on their air, and they're handling multiple calls all at the same time while incoming calls come to their screen. So this is what the dispatcher sees, just a couple of computer screens, right? But all necessary. They have their radio computer all the way to the right where they could talk to the officers on the radio. They have 3 screens for their computer-aided dispatch. Those would be in the middle. The one in the very middle is the CAD mask screen. To the right is a map screen, and to the left is what we call the status monitor. That's where all the holding calls go, and that's where the calls that get dispatched are as well. I'll get into that on a different slide in a second. They also have a telephone. That would be your upper left. The telephone computer allows them to call people, and it's all on a recorded line. And then we also have an internet computer to the bottom left where they could look up various databases, go to Google. They can basically try to figure out things that maybe we don't know quick enough, like say, I'm in front of the McDonald's, but I'm on a certain intersection and I don't know the address. They could go to Google and look up the address of the McDonald's. There's a lot of things that the internet computer, we also call it the LAN, can do for a dispatcher. This screen right here is the status screen. So this is where the dispatcher sees at the top part all of your holding calls. And so that would be like you see the red one, that is the type code is a paraphrase for a domestic violence assault call. The other holding calls, they go in a color-coded scheme. So priority 1s are red, priority 2s are white, and priority 3s are yellow. And then from there, on the below the holding calls queue, you see a bunch of officers and like 2 David 82 or 2 K11, that's 2 King 11. These are all the calls that they've dispatched on. So it can show the dispatcher their status. It could say A for arrived, E for en route. The dispatchers are keeping track of all of these officers and they're trying to maintain their status to check for everybody's safety. So they're keeping tabs on that at all times. And on the left side, those are the available resources to the dispatcher. So the officers have specific codes that identify what areas they're working, and that allows the dispatcher to be organized in who they should send and how they should send. So right now you have sergeants, patrol officers, and you even have a couple of parking enforcement units. But the left side is where all of their available resources live. This is a close-up of our map. And so the CAD map is really useful for the dispatcher because officers have the ability to have GPS tracking on their vehicles. And so they can keep track of where people are going for their safety. If something comes up, like they key up on their radio and we can't understand what they're saying, the dispatcher can send help to those officers if they need it or it's an unknown situation. They also can see the map of a call. So the blue box with the numbers on top of it, that's where all of the CAD events, that's a CAD event. And so we constantly map things so we can see, okay, where are they at? 4th and Madison. And then dispatchers will take it a step further and they'll look up for CAD hazards or any kind of danger factors based on the geography. The officers do that as well. So it's kind of like a combination effort. Everybody's trying to look out for safety factors. The map is a huge resource for dispatchers. Geography is everything. For us and the city, I'm sure you're all aware of it as residents, but we train our call takers and dispatchers from day one to understand geography to a T. We teach them about how streets, say any kind of a location where it's a street runs east and west, right? Avenues go north and south. We have different types of street designations like ways, circles, terraces, parkways. Those ones are wild cards, but a lot of them can be diagonal. Teaching them these little factors assists them in understanding where somebody is if they say their location incorrectly. I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody be on First Avenue Northwest and call it First Street Northwest. But we train our people to understand the difference between the two and correct it using their resources. So the directionals that exist in the city, we have east, west, north, south, southwest, northeast, and northwest. This would be streets or avenues that have those designations and directionals. So it's an indicator to us to make sure we correct people, because sometimes somebody can be in West Seattle and say they're on Avalon South. And we have to be aware of that to be able to say, wait, are you actually in West Seattle? Do you mean Southwest? And they'll go, oh my gosh, yeah. Because the point is getting the correct address the first time. There's not a southeast directional in Seattle. So as an example, like I was saying, getting the correct address is crucial, because 2700 First Avenue versus 2700 First Avenue South are two totally different locations, and they're in two different police precincts. So if you got that address wrong, you're sending people to the wrong location, and that could be the difference between life and death, literally. Another example is 300 Pine. So 300 Pine is downtown Seattle, but 300 East Pine is in Capitol Hill. So if anybody was fighting traffic today like we were, during the hot times of the day, trying to do 300 Pine versus 300 East Pine and getting that wrong could be a traffic nightmare and just delay the process equally. So for us, the way dispatch sees it, this is what geography looks like for us. Everything is broken up into precincts, and they're broken into sectors and beats. And in the North Precinct, you have 5 sectors and 3 beats in each sector. So you have Boy Sector, Union Sector, John Sector, Norris Sector, and Lincoln Sector. That pretty much covers it as far as the overview of our department. I will throw this out there for anybody who's interested. We are hiring. We're always hiring for 911 dispatchers. It's a pretty cool job for anybody who likes the thrill of assisting in public safety. Again, it's great medical, dental, vision, city job, and there is a lot of career advancements. I will say this too. We are hiring for our CCR team as well. We have one opening currently, and we're going to be posting for that job as well for anybody interested in community crisis response. That pretty much wraps it up. As we can take questions now at this time.
Yes, if you want to, yep, stop sharing. Excellent. Okay, let's scroll here and see what we've got. Oh, and let me also briefly just call out that Representative Lauren Davis joined us tonight, and I didn't have a chance to recognize her when we first started. So thank you, Representative Davis. We're always happy when you can show up, and we're glad you survived the legislative session. So thank you. Okay, let's see. Okay. Can you explain parameters of a zone? A question from CJ. You referenced a zone early in your presentation. Do you know what that's?
Yeah. So kind of going back to that map that I showed you of all of the different precincts, the way that we have it is we have radio zones or radio channels. So we have a radio dispatcher who's assigned to a specific zone. And in our city right now, we have 4 primary dispatchers that operate 24/7. So we have north, south, east, and west. So the way our setup works, north is dispatching for all of the North Precinct. East is dispatching for all of the Seattle Police East Precinct. West is the West Precinct. South is interesting because they're dispatching for 2 precincts. So they're dispatching for South and West Seattle, which is the Southwest Precinct.
Okay, great. Jeff asks, can you briefly discuss locating where I am calling from when I'm using a cell phone? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a fun topic because a lot of people watch like like
NCIS?
NCIS, and they're like, can you triangulate the coordinates and all that stuff? And the truth of the matter is that's TV. We do have the ability to get a location from your 911 Aliani. It's known as Aliani. It's kind of like an enhanced caller ID. It's known as advanced location information, advanced number information. Cell phones are tricky. So like if you have a newer iPhone, you have a somewhat accurate location down to about 500 feet, 500 yards sometimes. We can kind of know where you're at, but we still want to confirm it because the technology isn't 100% accurate. if you have an older phone, like if anybody still has like a Motorola Flip or an old school Nokia with the antenna, that is going to get a little trickier because those older phones, they only will tell us the cell phone tower that you connected to. So right now, though, it's kind of exciting times because as the cell phones advance and get better, there's a lot of companies that are working to make sure that the location is much more accurate. And we're working with some of those vendors. There's one in particular called Rapid SOS, and it's a free service that they offer where they have an enhanced location that they can give us that can really pin it down and then give us updates and a guess of the address you're at. In this city, though, where that can be problematic is if you're downtown Seattle in a high rise building. We can know where you are, but we don't know what floor you're on, right? And so it's not 100% developed yet, but a lot of companies are developing that. And so in Seattle, we can get a basic latitude and longitude of where you are. We can put in some numbers and try to get a guess on the address. Always confirming where somebody at is the best way to get a location. But we can see some information on cell phones and try to get a general location to send assistance. Landlines are always programmed with the actual address that you live at. Although I will say, if anybody has like Xfinity Voice or what a lot of these digital voice over the internet companies these days are, they're also known as VoIP, is you always want to make sure that you contact your subscribers and ask if your 911 information is updated, because we've had situations over the years where people move and their old 911 address is in their system. We've had somebody one time who used to live in Seattle that moved to Chicago, and they had Xfinity Voice and they got us, and they were in Chicago with a medical emergency. But those companies work diligently to make sure their records are accurate. But yeah, in Seattle, we could get a general understanding, but also Seattle is very strict about protecting people's privacy. So we don't have like a free pass to start pinging people's locations or doing what the NCIS thing would be, like triangulating your coordinates. That has to go through the city prosecutor, and the Seattle Police Department would vet that and get a telephonic search warrant with approval to be able to take it to the next level.
Okay, great. You mentioned, you're hiring at the end of your presentation. What is the current staffing level and is it sufficient?
Are we recording this meeting?
We are.
I would say, we do the best we can with what we have. We always would want more people if we could, especially in a 911 center as high of a volume as we have. Our current staffing situation is we're about down 15 to 20 people, and that's call takers and dispatchers. We still do very well when it comes to 911 speed of answer. That's a nationally tracked stat. And we meet the standard, which is answering all of your calls within 15 seconds, 90% of the time. I think the last report we had, we were at about 91%. And so we do good, but we always want to do better. We want to be at 100%. And so we're doing okay. We're a lot more healthy than other 911 centers across the nation. There's other 911 centers in the state of Washington that have 50% of their staffing. So the fact that we're in our high 80s as far as total overall numbers, we're doing okay. And just for reference, our total numbers when we're at full staffing is about 144 people in our 911 center. So you can see being down to about 120, 122, spread it across a 24/7 operation. We would always like more people.
Yeah, great. Lauren's asking, of the 800 to 900,000 calls a year, do you have data on the breakdown amongst the calls listed as priority 1 through 4? How do those break out?
We do. I don't have that information in front of me right now, but we track all of that. We track time to dispatch, dispatch and route time, arrival times. We track all of that. We even track by type code, and Seattle Police has an entire data science team that tracks this by how they're cleared, the disposition of the calls, what were the outcomes compared to how they came in. So there's a lot of data science happening behind it, but I don't have those numbers in front of me right now.
Is that something you can send to us later and we can share when we do our minutes?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it's funny
Great.
because there's also links that you can go to. So like if you go to seattle.gov/police and you go to data and information, you could actually see all of that information and more and filter out your searches. It's quite simple to look through their CAD dashboard. They have a whole lot of information on that data and information page.
Great. We have a comment from Rudy, I think to something you said earlier, which is he comments that lost prescription can be done by phone. I think that was one of the things that you folks assist with, or
For lost prescription medication?
yes, can be done by phone. He was just commenting on that, I guess.
Yeah, I would. I believe that could qualify for online reporting, but in certain situations when it's narcotic prescription medications, the telephone reporting unit might take those. But yeah, I would check the online for the lost property to see what the parameters are on the seattle.gov /police page, and they will probably direct you to call if it meets a certain criteria.
All right. With the recent updates to the online reporting system, we heard about that over this past year. Is it your team's opinion that it's working better now? It used to be very frustrating and people would just give up and not report online, but is it your experience it's working better?
I mean, I think technology is always a good thing. And I know personally, Captain Britt, who oversees the technology and innovation team for Seattle Police, does a really fantastic job with his team. But I would say, honestly, I can't really comment too thoroughly on that because that SPD would have the best information to give to you on that. Our department doesn't track the online reporting. That's entirely an SPD operation.
Okay, we'll ask the captain, another for his list. CJ asks, are care team responders volunteers and what skills do they come with?
So they are paid full-time city employees. Erica, do you want to answer the question about what skills they have?
Sure. Let's see. Can you hear me through J?
Great. Do you want to mute yourself and then I'll mute myself so then you can go?
We've spotlighted you. There you go.
Alrighty, can you all hear me okay?
Yes, and we can see you too.
Great, perfect. Yeah, so we actually have quite a range of skills. I, as a supervisor, am a licensed social worker. I also studied public health as well. All of our supervisors are licensed clinicians. I believe we have one licensed social worker and one licensed mental health counselor. Yeah, I believe we have a total of 7 MHPs or mental health practitioners. We have 2 folks who used to work as CSOs, one of them who used to also, I think, had a brief stint working as an officer as well. A number of folks who used to work in case management, some folks who also were on the mobile crisis team with DESC. So we've got quite a range of experiences and skills. Everyone does have at least a bachelor's degree and or a master's, and we all have previous work experience working within either social services or within the criminal legal system.
Thank you. And Erica, the numbers that you just referenced about those with specialized training, was that for the North Precinct, which you're supervising specifically?
Yes, I think in the North Precinct we have, yeah, I think all of that whole range is specifically for the North Precinct, as well as across the board as well, including the other precincts. We have folks who worked as DCRs or designated crisis responders. We have folks who, yeah, worked on the detox van as well. So yeah, a really broad range of experiences and skills.
Great, thank you. I think that there's another question here in the chat about data, but I think you've punted a bit on data, so I'm going to move past that one because I think that's probably within the data center. Follow-up question, is the work of the care team unionized? And if so, are they part of SPOG? And if so, what is the contract status?
They're not currently represented by a union, but they have signed into being a part of a union, and they're currently going through what's known as the accretion process. And so they don't officially have a union representation yet. It's going through Washington PERC. And so there's an unknown ETA on that. But yeah, they're trying to unionize. They're not a part of SPOG, sorry. And so the contract status on that is to be determined once they have a union representative.
Okay. And at this point, with the recent discussions about expanding, are they fully integrated into the North Precinct? The team that works there, are they located there? And
yeah, they're fully in the North Precinct area, and yeah, we've been there since January, and just slowly kind of integrating in and collaborating with all the teams and trying to expand our footprint and our availability and ability to assist.
Okay, great. Let's see. Jeff concurs that there's street confusion, especially Yesterdaway and Dennyway. Nancy asks, could you explain incident numbers and reports? What types of 911 calls don't get reports? Does incident number identify a report?
Yeah, so incident number, it's interesting. There's kind of like terminology out there and it gets really wonky. In our world, anytime you call in something, a CAT event should be created. And typically, CAT events aren't a guarantee that that's an official police report. So the way it kind of works is if you call in and say you have a noise complaint or a parking complaint, a disturbance, maybe a suspicious person in your neighborhood, you can ask them for the event number and the call takers will give those to you. But the key thing to understand is that those are not considered an official police report. Only when a police officer talks to you and gives you the numbers that this is your official general offense number, that's a police report. When a report is written or not, all I can really say to that is SPD is the best resource to answer that. It's based on the primary responding unit's investigation and determination on the next steps to proceed.
Great. Okay. CJ asked about where the postings are, and it appears that Jeff Silverman kindly gave her the link to the Seattle Gov's jobs board. Thank you, Jeff. Susan asks, if you sign up free on Smart 911, you can link your information with your cell phone number in case you have an emergency at home. So 911 will have your address automatically. And that she's put in, Susan's our vice president. She's put in the link to smart911.com. So that's a good resource for people to be aware of.
Yeah, that's a massive resource and it's voluntary. The key thing to that is you could put any information that you want in there, but they also vet you every 6 months. So if you get an email from Smart 911 saying, hey, we're checking to see if your information is current, don't send it to spam. It's not junk mail. If you don't respond to them, they do wipe the account. So it's just something to keep in mind. It might sound like a pain in the butt, but for the 911 world and public safety response world, it is a necessary evil, because if we have outdated information and we're going to a situation to potentially like force a door because we think somebody's having a heart attack and we're at the wrong place, you could see how that can become a nightmare situation really quick.
Yeah. Patricia adds support to what you just said, because she just says she just got pinged to update her Smart 911. So apparently it is working. Alex is giving us a little more information for people who want to figure out the cross streets in Seattle. Thank you. Oh, Nancy is asking, does Smart 911 autofill the call taker screen?
No, it's a separate application that runs kind of concurrently while they're taking a phone call. It would be that computer that I was referring to, the internet computer, also known as a LAN, L-A-N. So we have it set up in our center to where it automatically populates when the 911 call comes in. But it pops up as the first window on their screen and it shows them all the information, but it doesn't autofill into their CAD screen.
Okay. We have several things here where people are kind of asking about the job board, and who knows, maybe you just recruited a few people tonight. Let's see. Do you know, Jessica asks, do you know when location data will be back in the open call data? It was removed a month and a half ago and was useful.
Can she provide some more context on that? Is she referring to our page that had a data page?
I think that is the sort of call tracking system that the public can use to identify where a call is going to. But you know what? We're kind of at the end, so I'm not sure we can dig too much, but
we can add it to the chat.
Yeah, we can add it to the chat. That would be good.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. I think we're really kind of at time, but we've gotten through quite a few of these. I think we got most everything. Okay. Oh, Margatu asked a great question to end with, which is, can people schedule a visit to the 911 call center?
Absolutely. We do have what we call visitor and observer waivers. It's a small vetting process, but you can email us if you go to seattle.gov/care, or if you can remember the email, scd underscore, oh, I'm sorry, delete that, care_info@seattle.gov.
Okay, great. I think that's a great place to stop. Thank you to you and Erica. We appreciate your time. We got through a lot of questions too. I think it was really helpful for people to be able to get a refresher on what's going on. And we very much appreciate you taking the time to be here. So thank you. And I will also comment that you have provided your presentation. So folks will find that we'll send it out along with our minutes, and it's also parked in our Google Drive. So folks, if you want to follow up on anything that was there, we have it and we'll share it. So thank you again, Jacob. We really appreciate it.
And thank you very much. And thank you to everybody. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to attend, like I said, and we look forward to collaborating with all of you and all of our partners to try and make a difference in the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now it is time for Meagan Westphal with the City Attorney's Office. Hello, Meagan. How are you doing?
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Meagan Westphal with the Seattle City Attorney's Office. As most of you know, I work out of SPD's North Precinct. So the City Attorney's Office recently published its quarterly report for the first quarter of 2025. And so I wanted to share some of the highlights in the data with this group. So in the first quarter of 2025, we received 2,740 referrals from the Seattle Police Department. And a referral is just the word we use to describe any case that's forwarded. It may have multiple charges that are associated with that case. It may have a single charge, but it's just referral, it captures that all. That represents a 3% increase from the fourth quarter of 2024 and a 3% increase also from the first quarter of 2024. And so referrals are definitely still lower than they were kind of the pre-2020, pre-COVID era. But we are seeing a pretty steady increase. And I think that can really just be attributed to the really hardworking SPD officers that we have in the North Precinct. They're making really great arrests of people and sending over cases. So I hope we continue to see a steady increase in that. The report also kind of detailed the types and percentages of referrals per council district, which I find to be kind of interesting. And so it breaks down referrals into 3 categories. So we have our domestic violence referrals, which that's going to be any of your intimate partner crimes. And it also includes child abuse crimes. It does include some non-intimate partner household member crimes. So for example, if you have adults living together in a home that aren't in a relationship, but are roommates, we would also get those cases under that for the statute. Our second category is criminal non-traffic and non-domestic violence, which is a mouthful, but it includes basically, your assaults, harassment charges, weapon charges, thefts, criminal trespasses, kind of all of those types of cases that we see. And then finally, we have our criminal traffic cases, which are going to be primarily our DUIs. Reckless driving, hit and runs, and sometimes we see suspended license cases. So in the North Precinct, we see the highest referrals of our domestic violence cases in really the dense portions of Aurora, the dense portions of Lake City Way, and also the dense portions of Wallingford. That's where we see the biggest, the kind of hot spots, they call them. We see the highest referrals for the criminal non-traffic and the non-domestic violence category. It's really concentrated among our commercial zones. So Northgate, the University District, North Aurora, and also in Ballard. And then we see the highest referrals for criminal traffic cases around North Aurora, Fremont, and Ballard. And, we attribute that to the fact that those are the areas where we have the most kind of active nightlife. And so those are likely tied to DUIs stemming from the bar kind of nightlife area in that scene in that area. So as most of you know, the North Precinct has 3 council districts. So districts 4, 5, and 6. So for the first quarter of 2025, District 4 had 172 misdemeanor referrals, which only accounted for 6% of referrals citywide. Of those, the breakdown is 74 domestic violence referrals, which is 9% citywide, 27 court order violations, which is 9% citywide, 56 assaults, which is 7% citywide, 4 weapons charges, which is 2% citywide, 24 harassment charges, which is 9% citywide, 19 theft charges, which is 6% citywide, and 5 DUIs, which accounts for 2% citywide. For the first quarter of 2025, District 5 had the largest share of misdemeanor referrals for the North Precinct with 384 referrals, and that accounts for 14% of referrals citywide. Again, the breakdown there is 118 domestic violence referrals, which is 15% citywide, 58 court order violations, which is 20%, 108 assaults, which is 14%, 31 weapons charges, which is 18%, 39 harassment charges, which is 14%, 47 theft charges, which is 15%, and 18 DUIs, which is 7%. Then for District 6 for the first quarter, it had the lowest amount for the 3 council districts with 157 misdemeanor referrals, which is accounted for about 6% of the referrals citywide that we get. The breakdown is 66 domestic violence referrals, which was 8%, 35 court order violations, which is 12%, 48 assaults, which is 6%, 12 weapons charges for 7%, 19 harassment charges for 7%, 13 theft charges for 4%, and 21 DUIs, which is again the highest in that area for 9%. So in a total, the North Precinct council districts really accounted for about 26% of all misdemeanor referrals to my office for the first quarter. So despite being half the city, we do have a pretty low number of misdemeanor referrals in comparison to the rest of the city. There's a ton of more information contained in the report, and I'm going to put the link to that report in the chat so people can look at it. There's a lot of data, a lot of interesting stuff in there, and you can peruse it at your leisure. If you do have questions about the data, I'm not going to try to pretend that I know a lot about data, but you can send your questions my way and I can get you in contact with our data analytics person who can try to shed some light on some of the data in there. That's all I had for tonight. Are there any questions? And look at the chat real quick.
I think the main thing
Yes, I will
was
do that.
where can they get that data?
Yeah, okay. Yes, I will put it in the link right now.
That's great. Thank you very much, Megan.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Okay, so I think we are ready to transition to Casey, who has a knack more than anybody else for slipping in like seconds before he is due to be on, just as I was about to hit send on a text to say,
Where the heck are you? Yeah.
and then there he is. Welcome. I know you have 3 places to be, so we really appreciate the time you give us. But we did forward out the information you sent about the UW incidents as of yesterday. So thank you for giving us an update.
You bet. Happy to do it. I think a lot of people have questions because we all saw the reports on the news, and of all the property destruction. And let me go over the most common questions that we have gotten so far, and then answer whatever questions folks have here. The first one is, why are these going to the prosecutor's office if it's in Seattle? And the King County Prosecutor's Office handles felony cases from throughout the county, but also in Seattle, any misdemeanors that happen on the University of Washington campus. And so that's been the procedure for really decades, and also state roads too. So even if it's a gross misdemeanor or a misdemeanor offense, it comes to the King County Prosecutor's Office. The second most common question that we've gotten is, why are you only doing misdemeanor charges? Why haven't you done felonies? Like, why haven't you charged these already? And it's a really simple answer. We don't have the cases from police investigators yet. King County prosecutors can only make charging decisions on what is referred to us by police investigators. And so far, we don't have any cases, misdemeanors or felonies, to make decisions on. And that's not a knock on UW PD. We all know Captain Grossman, who's over at UW PD now. He's great. He has a great team. They know what they're doing. We have a lot of confidence in them. Our mainstream criminal division has been on the phone with them and with Seattle police quite a bit. And we know that they're working on the strongest cases possible to get to us. So it's not that prosecutors have declined cases or reduced cases. That hasn't happened. It really is just working with investigators to get the strongest cases. And once those cases get to us, that's when we can make the charging decisions. So on the property destruction, those cases haven't come to us yet. The next most common question is, what kind of communication is happening? Are you talking to police? What are you actually doing proactively? And what I can tell you proactively, what the King County Prosecutor's Office is doing is talking to Seattle police who supported UW police, talking to UW officials, also talking to our colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office at the federal level. There's been a lot of communication that the prosecutor's office has started proactively. And so we're not sitting back just waiting for things to happen, which I think when people don't see immediate results or headlines about charges or see court hearings or, hear that people bailed out, which was possible because of the statewide court rule, they think, are you actually doing anything? And there's a lot that's happening that isn't making headlines, but that's because police and prosecutors want the strongest cases. It really wouldn't be effective to have a good headline on a weak case immediately. What you want to get for everybody involved is the strongest possible information, so the strongest case can go to court, and it's the most effective in the long run. If people damage property, whether it's at the UW or anywhere, they can expect to see a courtroom and expect to get a request for restitution with a court order. That's just common sense. You can't get away with damaging property. It just doesn't work like that. And so as soon as King County prosecutors get cases like that, and we know the police are working on those, we'll make the appropriate decisions and be very clear about what's happening. So those are the most common questions that we've gotten any answers. Let me see if there's any questions here. Not yet, but if folks have
Casey,
questions.
I
Yeah.
have one. I was starting to type. When you say that you're working with federal prosecutors and communicating, is it possible to give us a sense of any shift in that working relationship, given the circumstances of oversight of places like the UW and WSU that have been instigated by the Trump administration? Is it still a good working relationship? Do you feel they're responsive to King County and your needs?
The short answer is yes. It is so good. So there are several folks, both from the city and both from the county level, who have gone on to work for the U.S. Attorney's Office and who fortunately still have their jobs. And so those conversations, not only around these investigations, but on all types of cases at the federal level that also might go to the federal level, and things like serious fentanyl dealing or promoting prostitution or gun cases. Almost every day, folks from SPD and from the prosecutor's office are on the phone with folks at the U.S. Attorney's Office, just to have those open lines of communication to see what cases the feds want to take, what they will take, what the investigations are like, and so that was the same style here. It really wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It really, because that communication is so routine and so regular. It's very common, even multiple times a day, to be on the phone both ways with the feds and the city attorney's office to say, hey, what cases are you taking? Which ones do you want to take? What other additional information might come in? Because we don't want to be operating in silos. If it's more appropriate for a different office to take a case, we want to make sure that we're as good a partners as we can be, whichever office that is. If it's the U.S. Attorney's Office, previously with Nick Brown and a new U.S. Attorney now for the Western District, or with Ann Davisson's office, whatever it is, we want to make sure that we're operating well, because there have been times in several years ago where that communication wasn't as good, and I don't think the public was served very well by that. We know from previous administrations at the city level, it just wasn't as good as it is now. And I think that if people saw the communication, they would probably be reassured that it's what people in Seattle and King County would want. The values aren't being compromised, but there is that good communication.
That's great. So we have people putting in more comments than anything here. Summary of damage that was put out online. Leon is
Yeah.
saying good editorial in the Times today calling for accountability.
Yeah,
CJ
that was a good one.
is quoting what the school has said. But it sounds like from what you're saying, we're kind of in a waiting pattern right now while the charges are developed and referred. And so next month, when I hope you're going to be at our in-person meeting, you can maybe give us another update on that. Do you have
Yeah,
anything
absolutely.
else to update us about other than the UW things going on?
This morning, there were 3 cases on the arraignment calendar that all involved Aurora. One was a carjacking, one was a promoting prostitution case. I think the other one was a commercial burglary. None of those made the news, but they were all really significant crimes. And I bring those up to say that I know that the city attorney's office is working very hard also. And so is our office, the King County Prosecutor's Office, on those cases. Most of those cases never make the news, but it's important for folks to know that those are still happening. And there's a lot to do there, but if you ever have an incident number and you wonder whatever happened to a case, please let us know and we can find out for you, because there's a lot of cases like that where they are charged, but you often don't hear about them overall.
Yeah. Great. Okay, well, Casey, thank you. Again, we appreciate you making time for us. You know, you're needing to be in multiple places, so thank you again.
No problem. Good to see you, Kenny.
We'll see you next month.
Okay.
Okay, Captain Davisson, it's your turn in the spotlight. Welcome. We're glad to see you. It's your time. You are on.
Awesome. I think I'll start with the questions that you sent me first that are related to UW PD, because it kind of just dovetails right into that. So a couple of questions that you asked. You said, how does the UW PD and SPD define boundaries for policing on campus in the University District as well as North Seattle? So the University PD has their own police department, obviously, and they patrol the UW campus. They don't patrol fraternities and sororities. They will go up there for certain events, but ultimately that is the jurisdiction of the Seattle Police Department. University Way, that's all the Seattle Police Department. But the actual on campus, the University of Washington buildings are all University of Washington PD. The next question that you had, see here real quick. So how does SPD work with University of Washington, and does the leadership meet or coordinate on a regular basis? So I am in frequent contact with both the chief of police for UW PD as well as the deputy chief. The deputy chief is Kevin Grossman. He used to work here at the North Precinct as a captain as well. So we do have a good working relationship. I've been to their facility already. When I took over as captain here, they put out a request to come and meet, and I took that opportunity to go meet with them. And I also brought a couple officers and Lieutenant Hain as well. What else? So how we communicate and coordinate, especially with SPD, or I'm sorry, with UW PD, oftentimes they'll have events or they'll have protests or demonstrations. And oftentimes they can handle those on their own with their own personnel, depending on the size and the breadth of the incident. But the larger the incident or the more information that they get, there might be issues, they'll put out an official request to our Seattle Police Operations Center and request for mutual aid. When that comes in, our Seattle Police Operations Center screens that, gets approval from the chiefs, and then ultimately we will, if approved, we will have spot coordinate what units will go there, whether or not it's POET, CRG, patrol resources, task force resources, and then we will be in support of them. So UW PD, the University of Washington campus, is a state college. So the most recent demonstration was handled by UW PD in support with Washington State Patrol, and then we were there to support both of them. So that's how that incident went. And I'll get to the other questions here in a minute. Should I go to the question with the hand up already, or should I continue on here?
We'd prefer people to keep things in the chat first.
Okay. All right. So I will go over real quick. I know that stats don't necessarily represent what people are feeling or seeing or living, but I do throw them out there. They are provided to NPAC each month so that you guys can see where we're at. So North Precinct overall right now, for year to date, rape, robbery, aggravated assault are all down. The total for violent crimes are all down 15%. For property crimes, arson is up 25%, but all the other property crimes, burglary, theft, motor vehicle theft are all down. So grand total for overall year to date is down 18%. And then the last 28 days, which is more of a reflection of what's happening right now, rape is up 17%, robbery is down 35%, aggravated assault down 25%, total down 26% for violent crime. Arson is down 50%, burglary down 41%, larceny down 17%, motor vehicle theft down 51%. So overall, crime is down 29% in the North Precinct over the last 28 days. Shots fired, though, it is up 18% in the last 28 days, but year to date, it's still down 8.9%. So that's just stats. And then I wanted to go over some of the things that notable events. I know that recently there were 2 shootings on Aurora. They were mentioned by, I believe Casey brought it up. He mentioned a couple of cases, but I'll talk about it. So we had 2 cases on Aurora on the 6th. So one, not on Aurora, but in the North End. One was on Nesbitt and 90th. This was a shooting. Officers were dispatched to a shooting call at the intersection there at 90th and Nesbitt. Callers advised that they heard gunshots and people running. Additional updates advised that 2 people were shot. On arrival, officers located a male and a female. One had a slight graze wound to the ankle, and the female had what appeared to be shrapnel injuries to her thigh. They were both transported to Northwest Hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The suspect, upon further investigation, there was information that was gathered that showed that the suspect changed his clothing, hopped on a Metro bus, and fled the location. So that's all we have that I can share at this time. And then another call on the same day at North 95th and Fremont Avenue was a female was observed in a gold sedan holding a firearm and ultimately fired what we believe to be 2 shots from a .380 caliber firearm before leaving in a vehicle. So we don't know the circumstances or why that was, but they don't appear to be related at all. It appears to be 2 different incidents. We all know about the University of Washington incident. I can give you a little bit on that, which is just that approximately 100 protesters and 15 potentially black-clad possible Antifa members were present to protest the planned event. Poet worked with UW PD and, I'm sorry, this is on the 6th. Poet and UW PD were able to successfully develop a rapport with the group. So this is a separate incident. And then ultimately that broke up. So the incident that we were talking about earlier with the UW PD, I believe there were 30 people that were arrested, or roughly 25 or 30 people that were arrested that had damaged the building there, the engineering building at the University of Washington. So notable events since the last time that we've talked, our officers are working diligently. I just try to highlight a couple of the things that they've done. So CRG, along with GIU, our General Investigations Unit, our Community Response Group, and the Homeland Security executed a search warrant for organized retail theft and recovered over 3,000 items of merchandise. So good. That was in the 9500 block of Aurora. Patrol officers observed a felony warrant suspect. The suspect took off running, tried to hide in a building. Ultimately, the officers, after a brief foot pursuit, were able to apprehend him, and they recovered narcotics and drug paraphernalia on him and booked him for the same, or drug dealing paraphernalia. Lots of things. I'm just trying to get some of the main ones. So patrol proactive operations, so our patrol officers that are trying to do some proactive work along Aurora, they observed a vehicle and people making multiple exchanges and contacts with the vehicle, and ultimately went up and made contact with the vehicle, and they recovered 148 grams of methamphetamine, 17 grams of fentanyl, 45 grams of crack cocaine, 9.9 grams of heroin, and 5.5 grams of M30. CRG was working on Aurora with detectives from the Gun Violence Reduction Unit. They tried to stop a vehicle that had no plates. It took off running. They were able to use surveillance vehicles as well as King County's Guardian 1, and they followed the vehicle ultimately down to Renton, and were able to take the suspects into custody at a convenience store there. Took both of the people into custody. There was firearms. Firearms were recovered from the vehicle, including a large drum-style magazine, and 2 handguns were recovered out of that. There's also additional follow-up that's happening. A male and a female entered a car dealership on Aurora and attempted to buy an Escalade, or were filling out paperwork to buy an Escalade there. And ultimately, when they went out to take a look or a test drive, the male pulled a handgun on the salesman and stole the vehicle. Our patrol officers patrolled the area, located the vehicle, and after a foot pursuit was able to take the suspect into custody on that incident. CRG working, felony arrest of an eluding vehicle. And scroll down here, there's a couple more. I will leave that. Well, patrol officer observed what appeared to be a DUI suspect that was passed out in a vehicle. Ultimately, after processing the person for a DUI, they located 33 grams of fentanyl, MDMA, cocaine, a scale, and firearms in the vehicle as well, a firearm in the vehicle. And then lastly, a couple of operations that have happened recently. Our vice unit has been up on Aurora, and they've been doing patronizing prostitution or the loitering law. They've been trying to enforce that, as well as our general investigations unit yesterday conducted an operation up at one of the businesses here and recovered over $3,000 in property, and made 5 arrests related to organized retail theft and just theft. So those are some of the notable events. I will
Great.
leave it at that. Oh, you had some more questions. Let me pop those up. Those were unrelated to the UW-PD thing. So let me pull that up. There was a question or a comment about the SPOG leadership identifying that the quality of some of the new recruits may be lower because recruiting standards have been lowered, and what is the response to that? I don't know. I honestly don't know what the standards are currently. If they've been lowered, I don't know. But I can say that the hiring process for SPD is very lengthy. There's a lot of steps along the way, a lot of training, a lot of oversight, meaning that there are a lot of instructors that these people coming in and being hired on the department have to go through. So they do the before the badge first, and they learn about the communities and what it is to be a police officer in Seattle, and all the different people and everything that they're going to be in contact with. And then they go to pre-BLEA, which is pre-Basic Law Enforcement Academy, and they learn about some of the responsibility and some of the training that they need to get into the academy. Once they get into the state academy, that's all standardized training through instructors. They learn about the laws, when to use force, when not to use force, how to use force, how to drive a vehicle properly, when to take somebody into custody. And that's 720 hours at the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. And then they come out and they go to our post-BLEA, so our after the academy training that's specific to SPD. The state teaches you how to be a law enforcement officer in the state of Washington, but the city of Seattle has a lot of laws and a lot of ways of doing things that are different than other agencies. We're usually a little bit more restrictive than a lot of agencies. We have body cameras, things like that, that our officers have to learn to use properly. And then after that, we have our field training phase where officers are riding around with other officers that are veteran officers, and they're learning on the job training. So that is about 3 to 4 months, I believe. And then if they are not passing a certain standard, they go on remedial training, which is an additional 2 months with another officer, teaching them how to do it. And then from that period of time, they're on probation. From the time they get out of the academy, they're on probation for a full year, meaning that they are being monitored by shadow FTOs, making sure that you're doing your job, even though you may not have an officer with you. So regardless of what the standards are, which I don't know at this point in time, the process to become a police officer is still really lengthy, and there's still opportunity to fail and not make it, or go on remedial and get additional training and learn how to become an officer. So hope that answers that question for you.
Right.
I don't know what accounts for so many more recruits now. I think that the recruitment effort on the department, as well as the opinion and the changing of times, and the fact that, well, one, we offer pretty good benefits, and two, it's a pretty noble career, and hopefully the opinion of law enforcement is slowly shifting to the positive. So, and do you know the demographics of the newest recruits? I have been on several of the before the badge micro community policing teams meetings, and it appears like we're getting a very diverse group. So I've listened to people from other agencies, from Texas, from all around the nation, coming in as lateral officers, and then the new recruits learning about SPD as well. It seems like we are getting a vast array of applicants, and so SPD kind of wants a representation of everybody that lives here. So whoever applies, it's a benefit to us. So.
Right.
And I think you had one more. Given the limited number of spaces at the police academy, how soon can so many recruits go through training promptly? So I gave you the length of time that it takes. It's a long process, but I don't know the specific number of how many spots they give SPD, but I do know that we get a vast majority of the spots. You know, all the agencies can go to the state academy, so but they allot certain numbers for each agency, and I know SPD gets a high number of spots in the academy. So with that, I will stop talking.
Okay. So I'm going to pull a few from the chat. First, MJ wants to thank you for your help with her situation in her neighborhood. So you probably recall you got an email a few days ago. So thank you for that from her. Let's see. We have several comments that it does seem like things are getting a little worse on Aurora these days. And there's also a related comment. Please discuss the plan and/or progress to install street and sidewalk high pole security cameras along sections of Aurora.
So I will give you what I can about the video cameras. My understanding is there have been 2 that have already been installed. The official start date for those cameras is May 20th, is my understanding, where our RTCC, trying to remember what that stands for, Real-Time Crime Center, there we go. Our Real-Time Crime Center, which is going to be staffed with people that are monitoring not only CAD, which you learned about CAD tonight, or computer information that comes in, or details and data about different calls. They're also getting video feeds. So 2 of those cameras are up on Aurora at this point in time. My understanding right now, those 2 cameras are active and can be used by our follow-up units, but they're not available yet for patrol. Patrol will be able to access that information real time after the 20th, is my understanding. And
Okay.
You had another question. I apologize.
I I think that was the gist. It was more comments about Aurora. One comment from somebody is that on Aurora at 104th intersection, the Arco gas station by the E-line stop seems to be a full open air drug market. She witnessed one of the drug dealers steal a bag from a woman on the E-line from her hand, then jump off at the location. A citizen chased the perp and SPD came almost immediately. But why isn't the Arco owner being tagged?
Being
I'm
tagged.
not quite sure what tagged means. I
What I
guess
mean is basically, I know that some hotels, I want to say 2023, some of those motels up there were closed down as a nuisance property. And that's kind of where I was leading to. Why isn't that being targeted as a nuisance property? Because I see it, like I travel that like really regularly.
Real quick, regarding nuisance properties, Megan, are you still on? Megan
she
Westphal.
is.
Yeah, I'm here.
So she can describe nuisance properties and what it takes to declare a property a nuisance property, and why it's a little bit more complicated than just saying, well, we've had some issues here and we should declare it a nuisance. Do you mind addressing that real quick, Megan?
Yeah, I can do it real quick. So the chronic nuisance statute is a little bit complicated, and it requires certain activities to occur on the property within a certain time frame. We need 7 nuisance activities, and those activities are specifically laid out in the statute what they are. And that has to happen within a 12-month period, or 3 within a 60-day period. And some of the difficulties are that the statute specifically tells us what these activities are, and some of the things that might be bothersome to people aren't laid out in the statute. The statute's really focused on serious crimes, assaults, prostitution, human trafficking, those sorts of things. And then the other catch is it has to happen on the property. A lot of times what we see is the property may be a reason for people to be in the area, but then the activities that could potentially be used for nuisance activities occur on the sidewalk or in the right of way nearby. And unfortunately, under the way the statute is written, we cannot attribute that to the property owner. So it's a pretty complicated process. We also have to have the owners have a conversation with them, try to get them to voluntarily abate it, things like that. So I don't know the specifics of what's going on at the ARCO, but it's kind of my understanding that stuff's happening around the property and not on the property. And that's likely why we wouldn't be able to use that there. But we can certainly take a deeper dive into that if that's an issue.
Well, I appreciate it, Megan. I just want to add to this that I was waiting for a bus, and in the back of that ARCO on the property was a man in a wheelchair just handing out drugs one after another, not handing them out.
Yeah.
Obviously, money was changing hands. But I saw in my little 5-minute wait for the bus, 5, 6, 7 people come up and just buy drugs from this guy on the property. And then you see people passed out on the property. So it's a lot of it is definitely on the property. Some of it's the bus stop, but a lot of it's right there. So
and I appreciate that.
He really does need a talking to. You can see that one of his windows is boarded. It's just a mess. And it's dangerous. That makes me mad because that's my stuff.
Yeah.
Let me step in there real quick too. I know Mike Cruzan is on this call. He's one of my project officers, and recently he met with the AMPM. Are you still on there, Mike?
Yeah.
Can you address what you found out?
Yeah, they're actually, the ownership's very responsive to our concerns. They're concerned as well. They're frustrated. The intersection there is one of the most important, if you want to call it that, significant intersections in the entire North Precinct. So there's more of everything there. The bus lines, like you said, drop off there. Some of the other buildings nearby, I'm not going to name any, are also sources of high 911 calls, high volumes of 911 calls, and that population tends to stay in that intersection as well. A lot of the activity at night that occurred in the ARCO has been addressed, and that's an ongoing thing. A lot of the sex trafficking incidents or people involved in that activity were using that lot until again the ownership tried to step up. But yeah, there are more things we need to do, and we're gonna continue to deal with that property as well as a handful of others some simple steps that we can do to remediate some of the concerns. But yeah, it's just one of the ongoing problems all across the the Aurora corridor.
Okay,
Yeah, I
that's great.
appreciate it, Mike, and
Thank
I
you.
do see more
CJ,
cops there, but it's not
CJ,
safe.
we need to move on to the next. We've got more
Okay,
questions.
I'm done.
So I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
Mhm.
Okay.
Katie, just one last thing on that. I do know that they just re-upped their trespass contract as well.
Yep.
So
Okay, good. And thank you, Mike, too.
You bet.
A couple of things I want to get to. We're generally hearing about increased crime. Some more questions. We'll ask you in a second to give us an update on Magnuson Park. We have one person, Jessica. You did not want to put your question in the chat, so we're going to give you a quick minute if you could be
Yes.
brief and just unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, so this whole incident is open since Monday, and it involves expensive stolen property as well as other incriminating items that I found at the park. And after 2 hours back and forth with 911 trying to wait for an officer to come pick it up, I don't have a way of transporting it myself. The operator and myself agreed to take it to my house and have an officer come here to my house to pick it up. Since I live across the park. It's still in my possession.
Yeah.
And it's still.
So I just want to show something. We found an interesting book that was marked at a very interesting page. So I don't know if you can see this, but I'm not very familiar with illicit drugs, but it might be heroin as far as what Google's telling me. I'm not sure, but we've had an officer. This was at Baker Park.
There's also about thousands.
Nobody showed up.
There's also about thousands of dollars worth of stolen property, which is in my possession, and a cell phone that is ringing, that was ringing over and over and over again.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt to give the captain just a quick second to see if he can start to respond.
yeah, happy to. I know Rudy, who's on the call as well. He's been emailing me about that. And I have Mike on the call, and Mike Cruzan, I had forwarded that on to you. So if you can address that and see if you can reach out and make contact with her and see if we can get that property. The other option, if you don't want to wait for Officer Cruzan or Officer Whalen to get that, because I know that 911 is backed up with life safety, as you heard tonight. We get prioritization of calls. If it's a life safety issue, it's a priority 1, and then it kind of bumps down from there. So in progress calls are going to be ones that officers are going to be dispatched to first. And I do know from talking to our patrol officers, sometimes we have 40 or 50 calls holding, depending on what the situations are. So it's really difficult to get out to a property crawl. But that's what we have our project officers here for. And then also when our precinct lobby is open during the week, if you have property that you want to turn in, you could also turn it in there. But in the meantime, I know that one of our patrol officers, our project officers, can handle that. Is that accurate, Mike?
Yeah, Jessica, I'll reach out to you possibly Friday. If not, just continue.
I'm sorry, I cannot keep this property in my house until then.
Well, I'm not at work, Jessica. That's what I'm trying to say. You can call 911 again. That's the best way to do it.
Can you guys communicate offline by email? Is that okay?
Okay. And given that we're at 8:29, I know there's a lot going on for people. We can't always get to everything, so I do apologize. We've gotten through a lot tonight, though. Could we get a quick update on Magnuson Park? We've had a real persistent group following that.
Yeah.
Leon is telling us it's really activated again.
Yeah, real quick, I did see one additional thing. What is a project officer? Project officer, we have officers that don't necessarily respond to 911 calls. They're there to address community concerns, that they have more time on their hands to sit down and talk to people and communicate with people directly for longer periods of time, where the patrol officers are bouncing from call to call. So that's what the project officers are. I have 2, one for the east side of I-5 and one for the west side of I-5, because our precinct is so large. And then the update for Magnuson Park. Currently, there's an MOU in place that the Seattle Police Department and the Parks Department have agreed to try to staff 2 officers paid for on overtime by the Parks Department Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings between 8 p.m. and midnight and that goes from May 23rd to September 2nd. So that would be the increased presence. In addition to that, we're going to try to staff 2 additional officers. Again, this is a voluntary thing for officers. We're going to put it out department-wide and see if we can staff it. But ultimately, it's based off of staffing and if we're able to, and understand that during the summer months as things arise, our patrol resources start heading down to events downtown. So whether or not that's FIFA or protest or 4th of July, but we're going to put it out to any and all officers on the department and see if we can get those staffed. In addition to that, our bike unit had been pulled down to CRG for the longest time, and our bike resources were based out of CRG. Now they're being pushed back out to the precinct. So we've identified one of our bike mechanics as well as a supervisor that will supervise bikes, and we're going to start trying to roll out patrol vehicle PIU with 2 bicycles that will go to different areas, different hotspots throughout the precinct, whether or not that's the University District one day, Magnuson Park another day, Lake City Way one day, Aurora one day. We're going to try to do that as much as possible when staffing allows for that. In addition to that, I've been talking to Lieutenant Haynes to see if we can get the mobile precinct to Magnuson Park just before the May 23rd, probably the week before May 23rd, to essentially say that we're taking it seriously when we are showing our presence before we start the enforcement. We've also been working with the Parks Department. We provided them with a SEPTED report for Magnuson Park, and they have been working with the City of Seattle on getting several of the items on the SEPTED report taken care of, whether or not that's trimming trees, trimming bushes, putting up additional fencing, putting up additional signage, increased lighting. I heard that they're putting up I know that they put up some ecology blocks around the entrances, so people, once the gates are locked, they can't go around it. They're going to be doing some additional kind of hardening around the parking lot near the boat ramp to prevent some of the vehicles doing burnouts and things in the parking lot. I don't know what the status of that is, but they mentioned that the other day. There is going to be a summer safety plan from the Parks Department as well as the Mayor's office and the Seattle Police Department that gets pushed out here shortly. We're kind of in the final stages of planning all that. Last but not least, our harbor, our patrol units they know that when they're not on 911 calls, when they're available to hit the hotspot areas throughout their district. So University Way, as well as over in Magnuson and up through View Ridge, they try to get up there as much as they can when they're not on calls. And last but not least, our Harbor Patrol has offered up at least once a week to try to do foot beats around the boat ramp in Magnuson Park when their call load allows for it, as well as kind of when staffing allows. So one of the issues with Magnuson Park is it's quite a ways away from the rest of Harbor's areas, so it takes them away from being able to answer other calls for quite some time. So they've offered up at least once a week. I believe it's only going to be once a week, but they're going to do it as much as they can.
That's great. Well, listen, it has been a lively evening. We've got lots going on. Thank you so much. And I was just going to say, Washington State Ferries just announced that they're going to return to almost normal levels. So I think we can take that as a great sign. There's really hope for Seattle PD. You've got recruiting going forward. You're probably going to have some great luck here too. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, and I just found out we're going to get one more officer here on second watch here shortly. So that's
cool.
Good. Or third watch.
That's
third watch.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I hope you're going to be able to join us at our in-person presentation, which will be in June at Epic Life Church. I said it at the beginning of the meeting. It is at 105th and Stone. We have the Chief of Police joining us. So we'd love to see everybody there. And let's see, what else? We're going to do our voting. No one else has raised their hand wildly to say they want to be president. Okay, fine. And so we hope you'll join us in June. It should be a good meeting. And please do try to get there around 6:30 if you can. It's a great opportunity to get to meet some people in person and have a few conversations face to face with people that otherwise you mostly get to see via Zoom. So Thank you very much for everything. And we're going to stop the recording. And if the board would stay on, that would be great.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.